Welcome to Progress in San Diego. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host, Walter Davis, and we're doing part 2 of our interview with Beth Green. And I want to make sure that during this interview, we get out your schedule because we talked a lot the last time and didn't cover some things. But for those of you that are listening to part 2 and you didn't get a chance to see part 1, Beth Green is an internationally known spiritual teacher, philosopher, intuitive counselor, composer, and consultant. Please take a look on YouTube for part 1 of this interview, and that way some of the gaps that you may encounter with this interview will be filled in. So with that, I want to go ahead and move on to the topic you wanted to discuss, which is your schedule, and I don't want to say the term incorrectly, but it has a vortex of change.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, please.
Well, I'm going to give you just a moment's history, and then I'm going to talk about the vortex of change itself. As I've mentioned, we were talking earlier, I'm an intuitive. I get everything that I learn, every book I've ever written, every piece of music I've ever written just comes from inspiration. I claim no credit for anything. And I'm happy that way, because wherever I go, I have a director that's directing things, and I just relax. So I never have to rehearse anything or worry about anything, and that's kind of a cool way to live. And one day I was told, okay, we're going to have a retreat in August. And I said, okay, so what's the topic of the retreat? And I heard these words coming like from nowhere, right? This is like an inner voice. I'm not insane. There is an inner voice that speaks to me and said, creating the collective vortex of change. So I said, all right, that sounds pretty intriguing, doesn't it? Would you come to a retreat that had that name? I shouldn't ask. Okay, so anyway, I knew I was in trouble when I asked him that. So, so I didn't know what it meant. And as we have come closer to it, it has come to me. I have been guided to what this means. You see, we're all talking about the need for change. And in the first part of our interview, we were talking about some of the emotional healing that needs to happen, that we need to learn how to put our egos aside, and what it takes in order to be able to do that, how we need to change and train our consciousness. But we need more than that for there to be real and permanent change on this planet. We have to work individually, we have to work collectively. We have to go through not only my ego's resistance and your ego's resistance, but the ego's resistance. We have a whole world of egos that are resisting change, where people are sort of stuck in some self-interest. And we have to deal with the collective fear that we have of one another, which gives rise to so much cruelty. And how are we going to do that? We have to do it collectively. That means we have to unify in many ways. We have to unify our intention. But now there's another aspect of this.
Before we go to the other aspect, please hold on to that.
Yes.
You got that in your mind, right?
Yes.
The next aspect.
Yes.
Okay. Bink, you got it, right?
Nah.
Okay. So, we need to have a discussion about feelings. It seems like people don't know how to talk about feelings. It seems like people think too much. They intellectualize. I ask people how they feel, and they tell me how they think all the time. I don't hear conversations about shame, and shame is one of the most powerful emotions. And you don't hear people have a conversation about that.
You haven't been to the Stream, my organization.
Okay, well, I want to come there.
But you should.
What I'm saying, though, on the everyday level,
absolutely.
Okay, one of the driving factors for addiction, right?
Yes.
And one of the most destructive things in families is shame.
Yes.
I don't hear people having conversations about that. I don't hear people talking about fear. I don't hear people talking about guilt. I don't hear people differentiating between shame and guilt. They use those terms as though they're interchangeable, and they're not. They're profoundly different. What about happiness? We don't even know how to be happy in this society, right? Remember when you were a little kid, someone gave you a ball, you were so happy, like some little thing. Now you get people get big things and they're cool. Yeah, well, okay, yeah, that's fine. So we don't know how to display our emotions. It's not okay, especially for men. Men in this society we're not supposed to show fear. We're not supposed to cry.
Yeah.
So, but to make a long story short, I've learned that people that have the courage to go through their feelings are the strong ones. The other ones that are trying to hide their feelings are the weak people. So, before we move on to your next segment, I wanted to make that point that you say we got to come together. What I want to point out is that we need to learn to get out of our heads and more into our hearts.
Absolutely. This is exactly the work that we do. If you came to a stream spiritual service, for example, which they're free, the first Sunday of every month, you come in and you'll see people getting up and talking about their fears, their shame, and we get into all of that. We have a men's group that is about, and it's called Men Getting Real with Men. And that's exactly what it's about. We almost if any workshop you come to of mine, you're going to hear about shame, because it's shame that causes people to feel so negatively about themselves, yet be so defensive. I mean, why is it that we're constantly justifying our bad behavior? It's because we feel shame, and we were shamed as children. Instead of getting honest about who we are, what our problems are, we're hiding it. So I'm totally on the same page with you. We need to deal with fear, and we do. That's why counseling and group processes are a huge part of consciousness training. We have a program called Consciousness Boot Camp, as I mentioned before, and it's full of healing segments where we deal with emotions and we get to the root of it. We get to what happened to you as a kid, what you were feeling, what everybody around you was feeling, and how we can get through that. So we need to deal with all that boiling emotion, which is really what's driving people. People think that they're being driven by their minds, but they're really being driven by their emotions. I've seen this over 30 years since I've been counseling. So we need to deal with that. We need to change people's thinking as well. And then finally, and this actually brings me back to the vortex, I wasn't sneaking back, it just happens, is we need to also deal with ourselves as energetic beings. We are thinking beings, we are feeling beings, we are energetic beings. We are energy and in form. And everything that happens to us, we're impacted by the energy of one another. We don't know how to deal with that because nobody ever talks about it. If you think people don't talk about their feelings, people really don't talk about energy. They don't even know it exists. There's a complete unawareness. We need to deal with our food because our food impacts the way we feel emotionally and energetically. You know, you start eating sugar and you're going to find yourself going, wah, 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 you know, caffeine, wah, 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 you know, and then we say, well, then we have to take a pill to calm down. So we are energy beings, and then there's this other energy, which is the divine energy. That's the spiritual component, which we also have, which is also in our innate potential. Not only do we have a potential for empathy, but we also have a potential for spiritual beingness, is the only way that I can describe it, where you actually feel the presence of something beyond human consciousness. And in the Vortex of Change campaign, what we are doing, Walter, is we are bringing together healing modalities for feelings. We also have a women's group as well as the men's group, but we have healing modalities for those feelings. I have a book called Living with Reality. You can get it free as in a PDF file on the internet at Living with...
Don't mention the website. We can't say websites.
Okay.
On public access.
Okay, thank you for advising me. But you can get this free. It's a 688-page book about shifting our consciousness and how to do it, and self-help exercises and tools of how to deal with everyday life to shift the way we think. So we have to shift the way we feel. We have these programs. We have to shift the way we think, which we also do in Consciousness Boot Camp, and which is through my books and through the teachings. And then we have to shift the way we experience ourselves in the world from I'm alone, I'm scared, to feeling these incredible spiritual energies that are on the planet that are actually real, that people like me who are trained and anybody can learn to feel this. And when those things come together, our intention to change, our collective intention to change, and what I call the divine intention for us to change, when we can harness the spiritual energies that are here, that people talk about as chi, life force, you know, in Qigong and Tai Chi, people are beginning to tune in. Oh my God, there's another dimension of reality that we in the West tend to completely ignore. When we put all of that together with the divine intention, we can create what I call the collective vortex of change, which means that we're starting to build an energy field that's made up of all these components, but is bigger than any of them. This energy field, now this is going to sound goofy, but I'm going to say it and then I can explain it. It's like a whirlwind. It's like a hurricane. You know, it's a powerful energy field that starts to sweep away all those encrusted, old patterns that we can't seem to break by ourselves. One of the saddest things to me, just as a person and as a counselor, is to see people who have tried to change, who have tried to overcome addictions, who don't want to beat their kids, or don't want to be the way they are, and they're caught up in these patterns and they can't seem to break out. You know, the people who say, I'm not going to eat, I'm not going to overeat, and they've got the spoon in the ice cream, right? And I feel the pain of that. And why is that? It's because we're not separate individuals. If we don't change collectively, we cannot get through those fears ourselves. We can't get through the shame ourselves. We can't do this alone. We can't do it in our heads. We need to bring ourselves together to create a collective, a culture, a different way of being, where everybody is able to be supported to be different. It's a lot harder to stop drinking if you're living in a family where everybody's got the bottle open than it is if you're living in a family where everybody's sober. And it's hard to stop thinking ego if you're living in a world where everybody else is out for number one. If I could believe that you really care about my well-being as well as yours, I'm going to be more likely to be able to relax and work with you and trust you too. We have to create a culture. So that's why it's collective, and it needs to be informed by this divine energy, which I can't explain. I don't have to, but I know that it's there and I can feel it, and it's energetic. And when we bring all those things together, amazing things start happening. It's like that tornado that starts to break up and break down those structures that we're so attached to that are killing us.
And that's very powerful. There are many different things that we don't understand, and I'm glad you said that about the divine or higher power or whatever that is. We have dark energy around us and dark matter that occupy more than 80%, yet no one knows what that is. And I hear people profess to know what the higher power or what God is or what these other powers are out here, yet they can't explain to me what dark energy is. And so what I'm hearing in our society and what I'm hearing you describe is the fact that people are engaged in rationalization,
yes,
justification,
yes,
and minimization.
Yes.
And I call that stinking thinking, mm-hmm, or mind vomit, mm-hmm, because they have all these things talking, yeah, and as you mentioned, people are driven by their emotions, mm-hmm, not so much by their minds as they think. We saw that in World War II, for example. People were beaten up into this frenzy to go to war when, mm-hmm, they kept saying, remember Pearl Harbor, and mm-hmm, everybody, mm-hmm, was in this, mm-hmm, frenzy. Mm-hmm. And so this is why we continuously have false flag attacks that are generated for imperial mobilization, mm-hmm, in this country, mm-hmm, over and over again, mm-hmm, where people are motivated to go to, mm-hmm, war, where they think that that's, mm-hmm, a way to resolve, mm-hmm, the issue, when, mm-hmm, war is not the answer.
Absolutely.
So, as you said, these destructive methodologies of thinking and patterns are the things that are destroying our families. They are destroying our treasure. They are destroying our country. They are destroying our environment. They are destroying
our
us
souls
as human beings and as energy beings, as you mentioned. So I don't want to interfere with you. I want you to continue talking about the vortex and or other things you want to bring up. We're coming into our last 15 minutes of, mm-hmm, this interview, and so we have a lot to cover. So please go ahead. Well,
the vortex of change exists because I see it and I feel it, because I'm seeing changes today that, I don't know how old you are, but you're probably kind of close to the same vintage
39.
that I am. Right. So, I was born in 1945 at the end of World War II, and I've seen so many changes, and we've gone through different evolutions in our spirituality as well. And I've been teaching basically the same thing, that we need to shift the collective consciousness. I've been teaching that it's all about the collective evolution. I've been teaching that it's about the divine. I've been teaching all of this for 32 years. And all of a sudden, people are saying, yeah. Now, it's like, how did that happen? Because there's something changing in the collective consciousness. There really is, it is 2012, and there really is something that's happening. And all of a sudden, there is a quickening. Now, there's a lot of people who are still fighting and still scared. I don't want to separate from them because we are one. But what I do say is, let those of us who are willing to get past all that work together to build up the power so that those people who can't make it yet can get swept up with us when that change is stronger. See, people, it's not that there are bad people, there are scared people and then there are more scared people. There are people who hate themselves and there are people who hate themselves more, which is, your shame piece. There's people who rationalize and there's people who rationalize even more than they do. So wherever we are in that spectrum, and I can understand all of it, if those of us who have this kind of commitment can unify not only in our external way, but on the inside. And I've got a video that I've done that I want to mention to you in a minute. And if we can we can build the vortex of change, that will then help all of us. In other words, in order to help you as an individual, I have to help build the power that's going to help you. I have to help build the power that's going to help me. I have to help build the power that's going to help change everything, because it's everything that has to change, because it's our human consciousness which is at the bottom of all of our problems. So I've got a video called Welcoming the Vortex of Change, and you can see it on the Vortex of Change. And
let me just allude to that. Those of you that are watching this on Internet TV and also listening on Internet radio, there are links within the body of the description of this broadcast that will take you to these videos. We're going to have hyperlinks, or there are hyperlinks embedded into the description to take you to the videos and methodologies in which you can get a hold of the music and the other documents that you're referring to.
Wonderful.
So that's all going to be built into the broadcast.
That's wonderful. And this is something free. And I'm saying do this practice every day. It's a mind, body, spirit practice. You make noises, you move. People say, oh, I can't do that. Yes, you can. I don't know why you can't make noises. We do when we're children. Anyway, it's, just these ideas we have. And this video, you just do it every day. And what we're doing is we're welcoming the vortex of change. We're saying, yes, I'm scared. Yes, I'm attached to certain ways of being. Yes, I'm scared of losing what I have. Yes, I'm scared of the future, but who cares? The bottom line is, do I want to build a better world or don't I? Do I want to hang on to the crumbs or am I going to go for the whole enchilada? And I'm saying, let's go for the whole enchilada. Let's try to take on the whole of human consciousness. Let's welcome the vortex of change, even if it threatens our own little personal fiefdom, our own little domain, because in the end, we will feel the oneness. When at our retreat that's coming up August 17th to 19th, that's a Friday to a Sunday. You don't have to come on Friday if you're working. In fact, you don't have to come all 3 days. You just come, we make it reasonable. All of my work is either free or very reasonable, except for the counseling, which is what supports all of the rest of the work, right? But we also have low-fee counseling, and we're always looking for ways of helping everybody. At our retreat, we're going to be kicking off this campaign, and one of the things we're going to be doing is we're going to sit together in a room, and it's an experience, Walter, when I have this capacity to channel these energies, and everybody feels it, and you suddenly feel like you're in another dimension, yet you're right here. And it's to be able to know that there is another way to feel. We had a workshop at the end of our last year's Consciousness Boot Camp, which is now closed, but we're opening a new one that starts in September where people can join us live, or you can do it entirely on the internet. And we have different levels of payment, and we have even free programs. And at the last months of our first year, this 2-day workshop, people were in a state of consciousness the whole time that they could not believe, where they felt this vortex energy. They were lifted into another state of being, and they were calm and happy. And nothing had changed. I wasn't any thinner or fatter than I was a minute ago. I wasn't any richer. I didn't have a man, or hadn't gotten rid of the one that I had. Nothing changed but me. And it was because there was a collective energy in the room that came from the divine that was real. I'm not talking about Sunday in church where you go blah, 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 but you're really stealing from your neighbor, or you finish meditating and you go and you snap off the head of the guy who gets in your way in the parking lot. You know, I'm talking about real change, permanent change, and we can build it together by building this vortex of change.
I see. We're down to our last 7 minutes, so I want to ensure that you're able to convey your action statement, call to action, which I heard some of right there. I want to encourage listeners to look at the possibility, as one of our favorite shows with Marilyn McLeod talks about, consider the possibility of this being a better world. And that's one of the focuses that we have within the Community Coalition and our series of television programs, are to convey methodologies and to think out of the box, to move out of the box in terms of how we look at things and not holding on to old behaviors. But with that, I want to come back to you because we have only a few minutes for you to convey your action statements and say to the public what you want from them.
Well, I want you to come and look at our website. I want you to look at our programs and consider whether they can help you. But the most important thing, and I think you started saying this for me, Walter, right now, is remember the way you felt when you were a child, when you looked at the world and you said, I can't stand the pain. Every one of us as children felt the world's pain, cared. Mommy, why is Daddy unhappy? Why is he lying on the couch drinking, beer? Oh, why are people so mean to each other? We have within us this natural desire for a better world, and we are so discouraged. We're discouraged with ourselves because we've tried to change and maybe we haven't been able to succeed. We're discouraged with each other because we've been trying to get each other to change and maybe we haven't succeeded. We've tried to fight City Hall and we think maybe we lost. Or we won and then we discovered that we were just as bad as the bums that we threw out. It's so easy to get discouraged, but there's no need. What we need is technologies, methodologies. We have them. We have programs. It's not just us. I know our programs and I know they work. We have spiritual teachings. We have healing tools. We have ways of channeling energy. We have the internet. We have technologies. We can talk to each other. We can do it this time. And we have to get over our discouragement and remember that we all have this dream that deep in the heart of every human being is the same desire to feel love and to be loving. And it is only because we've been so hurt and so damaged and so traumatized globally that we behave the way that we do. Let's come back to that faith. Let's use the tools we have. Let's make the commitment, and let's remember that there is help from the other side, from the divine, that can bring us to a higher level than we could ever have imagined.
Well, that's certainly beautiful. And that's certainly the world that I want to live in, one in which there is an opportunity for us to care for each other, to make sure that we don't allow people to go without food. We should not allow people to go without housing. We cannot allow children to grow up without the things that they need in a world that's plentiful. We cannot allow only a few people to take control of our resources and our treasure while the rest of us suffer. This system doesn't work for me. And this is why we have our media campaign. This is why we as everyday people have taken control of our own ability to project our messages. And we want to project messages of caring, of love, of concern, compassion for one another, for peace. We don't want war. We don't want our grandsons and granddaughters to go off and fight wars. We don't want our kids to go and fight. We want to have a higher, more educated, more caring society in which our race, our gender, our beliefs, our spiritual beliefs are not impediments for us to realize what you said very well, and that we are all one. We are, and we need to come back to that. And I like what you said about children. Children are my favorite people because they're very honest, they're very unassuming, and they they're not tainted by the thoughts that we tend to pick up as we move into this rational adultism.
Yeah, but children need to be educated, Walter, because children have egos too, because we're all born with egos. And unless we intervene with our children, we have a program for children at the Stream called Living with Reality for Kids, where we train the consciousness of children to think about one another, to be in mutual support, to take accountability, and to be able to ask questions like, what is for the highest good of all? We need to educate our children, but we need to educate the educators. That's us.
So we need to provide guidance, and we need guidance as pseudo-adults, because unfortunately many of us are pseudo-adults.
That's
we think that we are adults. We think that we're emotionally mature. I don't hear many conversations about emotional maturity in our society, but I hear things about football, about drinking, and a lot of other things that really are not as important to us as a whole in terms of making our society, our planet, our nation, our neighborhoods better places for us all to live. And that's what we strive to do within the Community Coalition.
That's so
and
good.
Within the structure of our television shows. We want to be a catalyst, and we're going to continue to do so. Even though these are the last shows that we're going to have here at Cox Communications, we're going to continue to take our media apparatus out into the field, where we're going to be covering things live from around Southern California and the world, for that matter. We're going to continue to be fighters for peace and fighters for change, and trying to elevate people like you that have a message about compassion for one another, because we do need to train ourselves. We do need to get that information. We do need to look at changing our hearts in the way that we look at various things. So it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show, and this hour went by real fast. I hope that we covered most of the things that you wanted to cover within these segments. Once again, we will have information on our websites containing information in which you can get in touch with Beth. Look for the number and websites at the end of this broadcast in which you can do that. I want to thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for joining us. I'm your host, Walter Davis.